The seatbelt sign clicked off with a soft chime, barely noticeable beneath the steady hum of the engines. American Flight 728 sliced through the night sky, smooth and confident. A silver body carried by physics and faith. Outside the windows, darkness ruled, no stars, no moon, only a deep, endless black that swallowed the aircraft whole. At 37,000 feet, the world below felt unreal, distant, irrelevant. Inside the cabin, passengers lived small, ordinary moments. A child slept with his head against the window. A businessman scrolled through emails he wouldn't remember sending. A couple argued in whispers about nothing important, life suspended in aluminum and air. Up front, the cockpit glowed softly, green and amber lights reflecting off polished panels. Captain Evan Marshall, a veteran with 23 years in the air, loosened his shoulders and exhaled. "Smooth night," he said, lifting a paper cup of coffee. "Almost boring." First Officer Daniel Reyes smiled faintly, eyes never leaving the instruments. "Careful, sir. Aviation hates that word." Marshall chuckled. "Fair enough." The aircraft was stable, autopilot engaged, weather clear, fuel nominal, the kind of flight pilots barely remembered afterward. But the sky had other plans. At 0217 UTC, a sound echoed through the fuselage. Not loud, not violent, just wrong. A dull thump. Felt more than heard, like a fist knocking from the outside. Reyes frowned. "You feel that?" Marshall straightened. "Yeah." Both men scanned the instruments. Everything read normal. No warnings, no alerts. A moment passed. Then another. Marshall relaxed slightly. "Probably turbulence from—" The second impact came without warning. This one was violent. The aircraft lurched, snapping left as if grabbed by an invisible hand. Coffee flew. Warning lights ignited across the panel like fireworks. "Master caution," Reyes shouted. The cockpit erupted in alarms, sharp, piercing, relentless. Altitude began to drop. "What the hell was that?" Marshall barked, grabbing the yoke. Reyes scanned rapidly. Airspeed unstable, left yaw engine 1 fluctuation. The plane shuddered again, metal groaning under stress. Marshall disengaged autopilot. "I've got it." The aircraft didn't respond the way it should have. The nose dipped. Hard. Gravity slammed everyone forward. In the cabin, screams erupted as loose items flew. Oxygen masks burst from their compartments, yellow and swinging like ghostly fruit. Reyes reached for the overhead panel. "We've lost." A deafening crack tore through the cockpit. White smoke poured in. The pressure change was instant and brutal. Ears popped. Vision narrowed. Marshall's oxygen mask dropped. He fumbled for it, hands suddenly heavy. "Mask!" Reyes shouted. Marshall pulled his mask on, but it was too late. His vision tunneled. The cockpit spun slowly, dreamlike. His last conscious thought wasn't fear. It was confusion. "This isn't happening." Marshall slumped forward, unconscious, forehead striking the panel. Reyes fought the smoke, heart hammering. He yanked his mask on and reached for the controls. The aircraft shuddered violently again. Something struck the fuselage from the outside. Reyes never saw it. The impact threw him sideways. His head slammed against the window frame with a sickening crack. His body went limp. At 36,200 feet, American Flight 728 became a missile without guidance. In the cabin, chaos reigned. The plane dropped suddenly, stomachs lifting as gravity loosened its grip. Passengers screamed, clutched armrests, cried out names of loved ones. Overhead bins burst open, raining bags and shoes. Senior flight attendant Sarah Bennett forced herself upright, adrenaline slicing through fear. Seats now," she shouted, voice cutting through panic. The aircraft continued its descent. Not a dive. Not yet. But fast enough to feel wrong. Sarah grabbed the interphone. "Cockpit, respond." "Captain, first officer?" Static. She tried again. Nothing. A chill crept up her spine. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't turbulence. This was something far worse. The plane shuddered once more, and for a split second, the lights flickered, darkness swallowing. The cabin before emergency lights snapped on, red, dim, unforgiving. A man shouted, "Are we crashing?" Sarah ignored him. She was already moving. Down the aisle, past crying passengers, past trembling hands reaching out to stop her. She reached the cockpit door and knocked hard. "Cockpit. Sarah, respond." No answer. Her heart pounded louder than the engines. She entered the emergency code. The door unlocked with a mechanical click. It slid open. Smoke spilled out, and then she saw them. Both pilots slumped forward, still, unmoving. The cockpit alarm screamed into the void, uncared for, unanswered. The aircraft continued to fall. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Somewhere in the back of the plane, a woman watched the chaos with unnerving calm, hands resting on her knees, eyes tracking the plane's movements like a predator reading wind. Her boarding pass read 24B. Her face betrayed nothing, and as the aircraft plunged deeper into the night, fate began quietly shifting seats. The cockpit smelled like burned metal and fear. Smoke hung thick in the air, curling around the glowing panels as alarms screamed without mercy. Red lights pulsed across the instrument cluster, bathing the unconscious bodies of the pilots in a hellish glow. Sarah Bennett stood frozen in the doorway. Both pilots were slumped forward in their seats. Oxygen masks dangled uselessly. Captain Marshall's forehead was pressed against the controls, his body unnaturally still. First Officer Reyes lay twisted sideways, blood trailing from his temple. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. The aircraft jolted again, a deep vibration rippling through the fuselage. The altimeter ticked downward fast. Sarah snapped back into motion. "Training, focus, breathe." She rushed forward, grabbing Captain Marshall's shoulder. "Captain! Captain, can you hear me?" No response. She shook him harder. His body shifted limply. Panic clawed at her chest. She turned to Reyes, checking for breath. Weak, barely there. The alarms grew louder, angrier, as if the aircraft itself were screaming to be saved. Sarah backed away, hands trembling, and slammed the cockpit door shut behind her. She pressed her forehead against the cool metal. For a heartbeat, just one before straightening. "Get it together," she muttered. "People need you." She grabbed the interphone and keyed the emergency channel. "Mayday, Mayday, this is American Flight 728. We have an incapacitated cockpit. Both pilots are down." Her voice cracked despite her effort to stay calm. The response didn't come immediately. The plane shuddered again, dipping lower. Passengers cried out as the floor seemed to fall away beneath them. Sarah tried again. "Mayday, any station respond." Static. Then finally a voice broke through, faint but real. "American 728, this is Shanwick Oceanic Control." "Say again, both pilots?" Sarah swallowed hard. "Affirmative. Both pilots unconscious. We have no one flying the aircraft." There was a pause on the line. A long one. "Copy that." "Stand by." "Stand by." Sarah looked down the aisle. 200 terrified faces stared back at her. She keyed the cabin PA, forcing calm into her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your senior flight attendant. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We are experiencing a technical situation and are in contact with air traffic control." A lie. A necessary one. She turned and moved down the aisle, scanning faces, hoping, praying for someone, anyone. A pilot, a military officer. A miracle. "Is there anyone on board who can fly an aircraft?" She shouted. Silence. A man raised his hand halfway. I play flight simulator." Sarah didn't even slow down. Another jolt rocked the plane. A woman screamed. And then, from somewhere behind her, a voice cut cleanly through the panic. "I can fly." Sarah turned sharply. The woman stood in the aisle, already unbuckled. Steady despite the turbulence, mid-30s, calm eyes. No panic, no hesitation. "You?" Sarah said, disbelief sharp in her tone. The woman nodded once. "Yes." "What kind of aircraft?" Sarah demanded. The woman met her gaze without blinking. "Fast ones." Sarah hesitated. "That's not an answer." The woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I flew for the United States Air Force. 12 years. Combat rated. Emergency landings. System failures. Night operations." Another violent shudder ripped through the plane. Sarah didn't have time for resumes. "What's your name?" she asked. The woman paused. "Call sign," she said. "Nighthawk." Sarah stared at her. "Nighthawk," she repeated. "Congratulations. You're coming with me." The cockpit door slid open again, smoke spilling out like a warning. Nighthawk didn't hesitate. She stepped inside and immediately assessed the situation, eyes scanning instruments. Body's damage. Her movements were controlled, efficient, no wasted motion. "Pressurization failure," she said calmly. "Partial electrical loss. Left engine unstable." Sarah blinked. "You know what you're looking at?" Nighthawk reached up, pulling on an oxygen mask. "I know enough." She gently pushed Captain Marshall back, checking his pulse. Alive, hypoxic, same with the other one. She slid into the captain's seat as if she belonged there. The aircraft lurched again, nose dipping. Nighthawk grabbed the yoke. The resistance felt wrong, heavy, sluggish. Okay, she murmured. You're hurt, but you're still flying. She disengaged autopilot. Nothing happened. Her jaw tightened. She tried again, this time forcing manual input. The aircraft responded slowly, begrudgingly like a wounded animal. Altitude 3,800 feet. Dropping. Sarah, she said, eyes never leaving the instruments. I need radio contact now. Sarah grabbed the headset with shaking hands. Shanwick Control, we have a qualified passenger in the cockpit. She is attempting to take control. A pause. Then identify. Nighthawk leaned forward and keyed the mic herself. This is Nighthawk. I'm not type-rated for this aircraft, but I am currently the only one conscious who can fly it. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, Nighthawk, copy. The left engine surged, then dipped. Warning lights flashed. Nighthawk adjusted throttle, sweat forming at her temples. Come on, stay with me. The aircraft stabilized slightly. Altitude slowed its descent. For the first time since the impacts, the plane wasn't falling uncontrollably. In the cabin, the screaming softened into frightened murmurs. Passengers felt it, the subtle shift from chaos to fragile control. Sarah exhaled shakily. You're doing it. Nighthawk didn't smile. I'm keeping it alive, she said. That's not the same thing. She glanced at the dark ocean visible on the navigation display. Night, endless, unforgiving. Sarah, she said quietly, how much fuel do we have? Sarah checked the panel. Enough for London, barely. Nighthawk nodded once. Then that's where we're going. Outside, the aircraft pushed through the darkness, damaged, wounded but still airborne. And for the first time since disaster struck, hope dared to breathe. Wind howling. Too fast. She reduced power. Too slow. She corrected. The aircraft dropped hard. Not today, she whispered. The ground rushed up. For the first time, fear broke through her control. Not panic, but respect. This wasn't combat. This was responsibility. 200 lives balanced on her next decision. She adjusted the nose. Committed. The aircraft groaned as if it were alive. Metal vibrated through the cockpit, a low, constant tremor that traveled up through the yoke and into Nighthawk's arms. Every warning light felt personal now. Every fluctuation in airspeed was a threat. Altitude 31,400 feet. Airspeed unstable. Left engine degrading. Nighthawk breathed slowly through the oxygen mask. In combat, panic killed pilots faster than enemy fire. She adjusted the trim, careful, precise. Too much input and the aircraft would overcorrect. Too little and gravity would finish what the damage started. Okay, she whispered. Let's work together. Sarah stood behind her, strapped into the jump seat, knuckles white as she gripped the harness. Control says we're transitioning to London Center. Good, Nighthawk replied. Oceanic controllers don't like emergencies. A sudden bang echoed through the fuselage. The plane jolted downward. Passengers screamed again. Nighthawk reacted instantly, pulling back, correcting roll, fighting the yaw. The left engine spooled unevenly, its sound changing pitch like a wounded animal. Engine's coughing, she muttered. She scanned the panel, prioritizing threats the way she had been trained years ago at Nellis Air Force Base. Fly the aircraft, navigate, communicate. Everything else was noise. Nighthawk, London Center came over the radio, calm but edged with urgency. Radar contact established. We see rapid fluctuations. Confirm you have manual control. I do, she answered. But she's heavy and damaged. I need vectors and weather. Understood. Expect turbulence and crosswinds on approach. Nighthawk exhaled sharply. Of course there are. She glanced down at Captain Marshall. His chest rose shallowly now, oxygen mask finally secured. Alive but useless. She didn't resent him. This could have happened to anyone. Another warning chimed, fuel imbalance. Nighthawk frowned. That's new. She switched tanks, watching numbers stabilize just enough to avoid catastrophe. Behind her, Sarah spoke softly. Passengers are asking questions. Tell them the truth, Nighthawk said. Just not all of it. Sarah nodded. We're being flown by a very capable pilot. Nighthawk almost laughed. At 28,000 feet, the aircraft entered rough air. Clouds swallowed them whole, white and gray churning violently against the windshield. Rain hammered the nose like machine gun fire. Nighthawk's hands tightened on the yoke. Her mind slipped just for a second into memory. Afghanistan. Night mission. Altitude low. Mountains invisible. Instruments flickering. Trust the numbers. Don't trust your fear. Her instructor's voice echoed in her head. The plane dropped suddenly, hard enough to slam Sarah against her harness. Easy, Nighthawk snapped, not to Sarah but to the aircraft. She countered instinctively, muscles remembering what her mind didn't need to think about anymore. London Center, she said, voice steady despite the chaos. I need to know how bad the weather is below 10,000. The aircraft shuddered violently, tires smoking as friction fought momentum. Runway lights blurred past. Speed bleeding off, slowly, agonizingly. Come on, come on. The nose dropped. She held it steady. At last the aircraft slowed. Then stopped. For half a second nothing happened. No sound. No movement. Just rain hammering against metal and the distant howl of wind. Then the cabin exploded. Cheers, sobs, shouts, laughter born from shock. Sarah collapsed against the wall, tears streaming down her face. In the cockpit, Nighthawk leaned back in her seat, chest heaving. Oxygen mask fogging with each breath. She shut down the remaining engine. Silence settled, deep and complete. She closed her eyes. Emergency vehicles swarmed the aircraft. Red and blue lights reflecting off the rain-soaked fuselage. Fire crews positioned themselves around the wings. Medics waited. Sarah rushed into the cockpit. You did it, she said, voice breaking. You actually did it. Nighthawk nodded slowly as if still processing reality. Get the pilots out first, she said. Hypoxia cases priority. Sarah stared at her. You just saved 200 lives. Nighthawk removed her oxygen mask at last. Her face was pale, exhausted, human. I followed procedure, she said quietly. That wasn't procedure, Sarah replied. That was a miracle. Nighthawk didn't answer. Captain Marshall stirred weakly as medics entered. Confusion etched across his face. Did we? He began. Sarah squeezed his hand. We landed, Captain. He blinked. How? Everyone looked at Nighthawk. Marshall followed their gaze. For a long moment he simply stared. Then he nodded once. Thank you. She met his eyes. Next time, she said gently, don't call a flight boring. Passengers disembarked slowly, some kissing the ground, others hugging strangers. News cameras gathered at the terminal, reporters shouting questions that went unanswered. Nighthawk exited last, hood pulled up against the rain, trying to disappear into the crowd. She almost made it. The runway lights cut through the storm like a blade, white, red, endless. Nighthawk locked her eyes on them as if they were the only real thing left in the world. Altitude, 1 to 200 feet. Airspeed marginal. Left engine dead. Wind angry? The aircraft bucked violently as a crosswind slammed into its side, shoving it off center line. Rain streaked across the windshield in sheets so thick it felt like flying blind. Easy, she whispered, hands firm on the yoke. Easy. London Center's voice came through the headset, calm but strained. Nighthawk, you're slightly left, of course. I know, she replied. Correcting. She fed in right rudder, aileron into the wind, balancing forces the way she had. Been taught years ago by instructors who never imagined this scenario on this aircraft. With this many souls on board, in the cabin silence had replaced screaming. Passengers clutched armrests, eyes closed, lips moving in prayer. Some filmed, some cried quietly. All of them felt it now. The thin line between survival and catastrophe. Sarah Bennett stood at the front, braced against the bulkhead, eyes fixed on the cockpit door as if willing it to stay closed, willing the woman inside to succeed. 500, the automated voice called out. Nighthawk ignored it. Her entire world had narrowed to airspeed, descent rate, and that glowing strip of concrete rushing toward her. The wind shifted suddenly. Hard. The plane lurched right. Nighthawk reacted instantly, correcting, fighting inertia and physics with muscle memory and will. The controls felt heavy, sluggish, but responsive enough. Barely. 400. Too fast. She pulled back gently. The aircraft ballooned, then sank. Don't float, she muttered. Don't you dare float. The left wing dipped dangerously as another gust slammed into it. She countered. The runway lights rose in the windshield. 300. Her hands trembled. She tightened her grip until they stopped. You are not afraid, she told herself. You are focused. The plane crossed the threshold. 200. The ground rushed up. Too fast. Too low. Come on, she whispered. She flared just enough. The main landing gear slammed into the runway with a bone-jarring impact. The aircraft bounced. Passengers screamed. Nighthawk forced herself not to overcorrect. The plane dropped again. Second touchdown, harder but aligned. She slammed the thrust reversers on the remaining engine. Brakes screamed. The aircraft shuddered violently, tires smoking as friction fought momentum. Runway lights blurred past. Speed bleeding off, slowly, agonizingly. Come on, come on. The nose dropped. She held it steady. At last the aircraft slowed. Then stopped. For half a second nothing happened. No sound. No movement. Just rain hammering against metal and the distant howl of wind. Then the cabin exploded. Cheers, sobs, shouts, laughter born from shock. Sarah collapsed against the wall, tears streaming down her face. In the cockpit, Nighthawk leaned back in her seat, chest heaving. Oxygen mask fogging with each breath. She shut down the remaining engine. Silence settled, deep and complete. She closed her eyes. Emergency vehicles swarmed the aircraft. Red and blue lights reflecting off the rain-soaked fuselage. Fire crews positioned themselves around the wings. Medics waited. Sarah rushed into the cockpit. You did it, she said, voice breaking. You actually did it. Nighthawk nodded slowly, as if still processing reality. Get the pilots out first, she said. Hypoxia cases priority. Sarah stared at her. You just saved 200 lives. Nighthawk removed her oxygen mask at last. Her face was pale, exhausted, human. I followed procedure, she said quietly. That wasn't procedure, Sarah replied. That was a miracle. Nighthawk didn't answer. Captain Marshall stirred weakly as medics entered. Confusion etched across his face. Did we? He began. Sarah squeezed his hand. We landed, Captain. He blinked. How? Everyone looked at Nighthawk. Marshall followed their gaze. For a long moment he simply stared. Then he nodded once. Thank you. She met his eyes. Next time, she said gently, don't call a flight boring. Passengers disembarked slowly, some kissing the ground, others hugging strangers. News cameras gathered at the terminal, reporters shouting questions that went unanswered. Nighthawk exited last, hood pulled up against the rain, trying to disappear into the crowd. She almost made it. A British officer stepped in front of her. Ma'am, we'll need a statement. She sighed softly. Of course. As they walked, Sarah caught up to her. You never told me your real name, Sarah said. Nighthawk hesitated. Then quietly, Lieutenant Colonel Maya Hale, United States Air Force, retired. Sarah smiled through tears. Nighthawk suits you better. Maya nodded. It was earned. She glanced back at the aircraft, scarred, steaming alive. 200 people walked away because of one decision. One moment. One set of hands that didn't freeze when the sky turned hostile. Maya pulled her jacket tighter and disappeared into the terminal, already fading back into anonymity. Outside, rain washed the runway clean. Above, the storm finally began to pass.